welcome back this morning. It's great to be sharing another day of Quantum Touch with you. What I'd like to start with is to hear about some of the healings that happened yesterday, because the camera crew had to leave a bit early, and I'd like to hear what happened during some of the sessions that you received yesterday, and some of the things that happened after the class too, because I know a lot of things come up. So who'd like to begin? Okay, great.
Last night was my most significant, it was a continuation of the healing that I received here. They were working on my sciatica, also on my liver, and the sciatica pain became worse at first, and it was kind of worse afterwards, but throughout the evening it worked out. The pain was gone. And in the evening, in my room, there was kind of a lot of emotional things that came up. Sadness and a few tears that was seemingly unrelated to anything going on in my life. And then that cleansed and it cleared, and I was left very peaceful, had an excellent night's sleep.
Yeah, it's very typical for pain sometimes to flare up and get worse before it gets better. It doesn't happen all that often, but it is not unlike the way things often take place. So that's great. And for the emotions to come up too, that happens quite frequently as well.
Would you mind if I talked about one of my experiences from a former workshop? Sure. This lady, I didn't work with her, but she was up on the stage, and her hips were very much out of alignment, and whoever worked on her brought them back in a very short period of time. And later on in the workshop, I worked with her and another woman who evidently had a lot of childhood issues of abuse and sexual abuse, and so a lot of tears, a lot of anger and rage, and with the continuation of working one by one, we would work on each person. That was slowly released, and there was a great deal of peace afterwards. I was very impressed by that.
Beautiful, thank you. Okay, who else noticed some healing from yesterday? Yeah.
I actually had a fairly similar experience. The pain moved a lot during the session, and it lessened, and then at night it flared up again, and it was pretty difficult to deal with until I went to sleep, and I woke up, and it's a lot better than when I first came in. Tendinitis, it was pretty acute, and now it's a lot more bearable.
Yeah, so it's better than it was yesterday. Yeah. So that's great. Now, it's not great that you felt the pain, but it is part of the process sometimes that pain will flare up. And if you had had a longer session, that pain may not have even had to flare up that much and would have gone away even faster. But what I like is that tendinitis can be a very stubborn condition, and here it is, better today than when you arrived yesterday. And so it's called progress, and progress really helps. Who's next?
I had a severe allergy problem with pollens. Kind of like severe hay fever yesterday, and after during the session, at the end of the session, I felt some relief, but about an hour later, I was perfectly clear. Yes. That was wonderful.
Beautiful. That's fantastic. Now this brings up a good point, which is the practitioner, if they're judging themselves on what they did at the time of the session, may have said, well, that wasn't a very good session, you only had a little tiny bit of relief. But if you wait an hour and see the results, it's much better. We've often seen that a lot of conditions will show marked or huge improvement the next day. So when people become certified practitioners, we have them document 60 hours of sessions, and they repeat the Quantum Touch class and so forth. And I look at the forms that people fill out where people evaluate the amount of pain that they're feeling. So somebody's got back pain and it's an 8, and at the end of the session, a 6. And they call 3 days later and it's a 2. It's very common for the body to heal itself at its own pace, and we're accelerating that healing. But it's also very common to see things shift immediately when you're working. But we're not to judge ourselves based on what we see, because what we're doing is holding the resonance, and what they're doing is getting well. And who else?
I was experiencing a lot of really intense pain in my eye, and kind of shooting pain like a migraine through the back of my head. And I don't experience them often, but when I do, I don't find I can do anything about it, and I do other types of body work, and it's just a pain that I can't get to go away. And I got a session that was really helpful in removing the pain, and by the end of the session it was maybe like half gone, and then within an hour it was all gone, and that was really great for me because it hurt.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's really fantastic. You know, I got a letter recently. There was a woman who had been on a jet plane, and during the jet flight, the man sitting next to her was having a severe heart attack. And what she did was she started running energy into his heart. There was a doctor on the plane who said, well, I don't have anything with me that I can do anything for you. And so he couldn't do anything. She ran energy for the entire flight. And he started getting better really fast, so they didn't make an emergency landing. And they flew all the way across the country. And when he got there, he was feeling 100% well. And the doctor checked him out and said, well, you don't even need to go to the hospital. You can, take your connecting flight. And he didn't bother even going to a hospital till he got there. And this was a severe, major heart attack the guy was having. And we also got a letter from the from the airline saying, thank you so much for what you did, and they gave her free tickets and so forth. But being able to help people in pain is something that is an incredible gift that we have with this work, to be able to be there and give that kind of pain relief, regardless of what we call it. Today I'd like to talk to you about doing the amplified resonance technique. And the amplified resonance technique is like giving a group session by yourself. But before we get to the amplified resonance technique, you need to learn how to do distant healing. But before I talk to you about distant healing, I want to talk to you about allowing your reality to entrain to your dominant emotional state. Remember yesterday we talked about how the practitioner holds a really high vibration of energy in their hands, and the person receiving the session entrains to that vibration and matches it. Then their body intelligence does what it needs to do. Well, when you're holding a very high resonant state emotionally, what happens is the reality tends to entrain to that dominant emotional state. Your life tends to feel normal. And what I'm going to talk to you about is how to hold a unified resonance of allowing yourself to receive what you'd like to receive in your life as a prelude to the distant healing, because these skills are extremely useful when you're doing distant healing, and the distant healing is one of the techniques we need to use in the amplified resonance technique. So we'll start here. Most people, when they think about what they want, are spending as much or more time thinking about what they don't want. So I asked a friend, I said, what do you want in your life now? And she says, oh, I want to move to a new apartment. I said, well, tell me about that. Okay, that's a clear desire. I want a new apartment. That's a clear, good desire. Well, what do you want? She says, well, I want a place that doesn't have a lot of traffic noise. And I want a place that doesn't have cockroaches or ants. And I want to have a place where I don't have to hear the neighbors all the time. And I want to have a place where they don't tell me I can't have my cat. And I want a place that doesn't have this and this, and I want to make sure the roof doesn't leak. Now, what's the picture in your mind of all the things you don't want? What's the picture in your mind of what you want? It isn't even there. When you tell a child, don't run in the street, what is the picture the child thinks of? When you say don't run in the street, what's the picture? The picture is running in the street. When you say just say no to drugs, what are you saying? You're saying just say drugs, because that's the only picture that appears in the mind. And if I say don't think about a green tortoise, it's the only thought at that particular moment. You cannot exclude anything by thinking about it. You cannot push against something you don't want without vibrationally including it into your vibration. And so the more people protest and yell, no, 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 the more they're vibrationally including these things into their space emotionally, and they're entraining vibrationally to that vibration. So when you have groups yelling, I don't want this, I don't want that, you're bad, you're wrong, you're terrible, vibrationally they're increasing their experience of that in their life. Now, you may notice that your life tends to feel normal. Everybody's life tends to feel normal. And everybody's beliefs seem to be true for them. But the definition of a stupid belief, in my opinion, is a belief that's very different than the one that I believe. And everybody seems to know that's true. But because we tend to attract experiences to ourselves that feel normal, based on the beliefs and the attitudes and the thoughts and the feelings which generate the choices and decisions. We tend to attract experiences that feel ordinary to ourselves. And because of that, everybody knows that their beliefs are true, because they keep showing themselves to be true over and over again, regardless of what those beliefs are. And what we see is that when you hold an emotional space, the reality tends to entrain to that vibration. And you tend to pull into yourself those experiences that are similar to the thoughts that you've been having. Now, when people pray, there have been studies on prayer that show there's two basic kinds of prayer. And one is very ineffective and one is very effective. When the prayer sounds something to the effect of, "Oh Lord, please help my brother-in-law stop being such a son of a bitch," that has been very ineffective. Get him to stop beating my wife, and get him to stop drinking so much, and get him to stop being so rude. And that doesn't work, because the vibration you're holding is not of love and it's not of healing. When people pray for the highest good and for the best and for the most positive outcome, then they seem to get really fabulous and wonderful experiences. Now, there's a friend of mine who was wanting to have an extra $30,000 in her life because she wanted to be able to, well, it was time for her and her husband to separate, and she needed extra money. So she did this pretend thing. She pretended she actually had it. She wanted to buy her husband out of the house, which is what they agreed on. She needed this, and she's never seen that kind of money in her life. So she's just holding this emotional space, imagining she already has the money. Imagining she's already there, feeling the joy, feeling the relief, feeling the gratitude. And as she walks down the street, she's thinking, I could buy that. I could buy that. I got $30,000 in the bank. And she's really letting herself totally live it. Well, nothing happened. Now, most people at this point would just get so discouraged and upset that they tried this stupid thing and it didn't work. And she just kind of said, well, she'd look up at the universe and she'd look up at the sky and say, hey, look, I live in a time-space reality here. Come on, let's get with it. Anyway, she continued the program and just kept holding the space, knowing I have $30,000, and feeling the relief and feeling that this is who she is, and a person who has this kind of money. And then one day, a few months later, she got a call from one of her friends who said, listen, you must never reveal my identity, but I just won the California State Lottery. I won $7 million. And he said, it would be my delight to give you the $30,000 you're asking for. And he said, but wait a second, since part of your agreement is your husband empties out the bank account, why don't I give you another $5,000 to just get you started? So she got $35,000. There's a woman named Esther Hicks who works with Abraham, and she was very upset because there wasn't enough rain where she lived in Boerne, Texas. In fact, they were having a terrible drought. And when she watched TV, the weatherman said, well, because of the high pressure and this and that, it's going to be at least 6 months before we might see the first drop of rain. Meanwhile, the water police were passing new rules and saying that you're going to have to water your garden only on this day and this day for only this much time. And she had this huge garden with thousands and thousands of dollars worth of plants and all these different sprinkler systems put in, and then nobody knew how the different timers worked on all the sprinkler systems, and some were computer and some were mechanical. And the idea of her going away, teaching seminars, and coming back to a brown garden, or the idea of her neighbors telling the police that she's been watering the garden on the wrong day, and a warrant for her arrest awaiting her when she came back from teaching seminars, were such horrible ideas. She decided that both of these were absolutely unacceptable realities. So what she did was she decided to open herself up to the idea of having it rain. So she told her husband, she said, honey, I'm going to go outside and make it rain. So he said, that's a very good idea. And she walked outside, sat on the porch, and she was so angry about the drought and the predicament that she was in, it took her about 20 or 30 minutes to find her first positive emotion about rain, to find her first positive feeling about rain. And finally after 20 or 30 minutes of looking, she finally found a place within herself that felt completely free and easy. And she thought, I love the smell of rain when it first comes down. And so she spent a minute or two just relishing that beautiful thought. I just love that. And I love the sound of the rain when it comes down. And I love the way my plants look when it's been dry and now they're getting the water that they need. I love the way they look after the rain. And she just thought, I love the sound of the rain on the roof. She just loved all the feelings of love that she had around rain. Very sensual, pleasurable feelings about it. And she spent about 5 minutes holding that space of the beauty and the wonder of rain. The very next day, a cloud formed over Boerne, Texas. And it poured rain hour after hour after hour, and it completely filled up her aquifers. And she didn't need to deal with the drought anymore. The weatherman came on that night and said, well, this is an anomaly, and we have a name for it in the weather business, some such word, for how a cloud forms out of nothing, and then just poured rain all day on Boerne, Texas. And it's a very strange anomaly, but these things do happen occasionally, and just brushed it off. The idea of this is that you can have 1 million people yelling no at what they don't want. And there's very little power in that. It just takes one person to hold the space of what is desired. And it's more powerful than millions of people shouting no at something. Rather than joining a protest march and adding your name to the big list, how much more powerful to be in bed, dreaming of a reality and holding the space and living that in your life and knowing it's true, and stop reading the newspapers and stop watching the news and stop arguing against. Go ahead, read the newspapers and see the news and all that in order to build your desire, because the desire can get very strong and the desire can be a very powerful aspect of it. Well, there's one last one, Alan, who teaches the supercharging workshop. He had attended my workshop many times, and he had been thinking that I had talked about this subject, and he had heard me talk about it many times. He thought, well, why don't I just try that? Because he had never tried it before. So he had a job making $8 an hour as an administrative assistant for a very paranoid and nervous boss. He was not happy. He was not fulfilled. Here's a man with tremendous compassion and skills for seeing energy and such, and here he's working this crappy job, basically. So he imagines himself doing something that is completely fulfilling. He doesn't know what it is. He just imagines he doesn't have to have a picture of what it is, but you have a picture of the emotions. So he pictures himself doing this totally fulfilling job and getting paid wonderfully well, and people adoring him everywhere he is, and just having the most wonderful time and being able to buy nice things for his wife, just having this lovely, easy life. Well, about 5 days later, he'd been doing it every day for about 5 to 10 minutes a day, just holding that space, but there was no internal contradiction within him. It's a very free thing. There's nothing pushing against the other way. As he does this, 5 days later, I happened to call him up and say, listen, I've got the supercharging class, and I think you might be the person I need to teach it. Well, and it all worked out perfectly well, and he's been teaching the supercharging class ever since. And everything he asked for completely came to him. Now, contradictions of experience, when you see something happen that you really don't like in your life, the beauty of that experience is it raises your desire for what is desired. So when you say, I don't want cockroaches, and I don't want this, and I don't want that, well, what is the desire that is born from those emotions? I want a place that's clean. I want a place that's spacious. I want a place that's beautiful. I want a place that's quiet. I want a place that feels wonderful, that feels sacred to me, that just opens my heart. I want a place where I can touch my spirituality and feel inspired. See the difference in emotional vibration of that? And when you hold what is truly desired, it's really fantastic. Well, there's two ways of getting to peace. There's one way, which the Buddhists are quite correct. You can lower your desires far enough that you enter a position of peace, and that does work. Of course, there's very little passion and enthusiasm and joy from that space because you're so desireless that hardly anything matters. There's another method which I prefer myself, which is if you have a very high desire, but let's just start here. If you have a very high desire and a very low ability to allow what you desire in, that's called suffering and extreme agony and pain and misery. That's the most painful place to be. And the Buddhists are right, if you lower the desire far enough, that'll actually become peaceful. However, if you have very high desire, if you raise your allowance levels of what you can allow yourself to receive, this becomes ecstasy, because everything flows, and you have no resistance to what is desired, and everything just comes to you effortlessly. It just flows in. So if you raise your allowance, I always told my parents to do that, but I realized that it's something I had to do for myself. So as you can open yourself up to let yourself allow, how do you allow? You allow by feeling more ease, by feeling more joy, by feeling more gratitude. For a lot of people, it's just a pretend to open yourself up to what would it be like if you already had it? What would it be like if it was already there? We live in a world where people feel fear all the time. And I am amazed. The more I think about this topic, the more astounded I am that nobody's talking about it. You know how you're in a room sometimes and you're there for 20 minutes before you notice that the fan is on? It's in the background. Well, fear is the fan in the background of our lives, and people are not paying attention to the fact that everywhere you go, every area of society tells you to be afraid. The military says you got to be very afraid. We need a big budget. The lawyers say, "Good thing you came to me now, because this could really turn out to be bad." The doctor says, "Boy, this is a very dangerous situation." The holistic people say, "You got to take these vitamins to prevent." The box of Dixie cups I bought one day said, "Here's 12 reasons to be afraid." It's like, yeah, it said, don't pick up the cup if it falls on the floor and drink out of it. Don't drink out of it. Somebody else drank out of it. Somebody else touches the cup. Don't drink out of it. Be afraid. The parents tell you to be afraid. Don't talk to strangers. Don't run in the street. Don't do this, don't do that. The teachers tell you to be afraid. Politicians, everywhere you look, everybody's giving this message about being afraid. Well, when you're afraid, you're holding a resonance that attracts more reason to be afraid. And so, what is the reaction to fear? The reaction to fear is join a gang, an army, a congregation, a group that's going to protect you, that you can feel safe behind, rather than opening up to a loving universe, opening up to the love that's there, and feeling your own safety, and feeling that all is well, feeling happy on purpose without any justification. There's a friend of mine who came up with a really amazing little thing that I don't even know what you call it, but he wrote about it in a book where he said that if you note your level of self-esteem, your self-honesty, your joy, your self-trust, all these different things, and you monitor them hour by hour, which is like really excruciating, and you kind of say, all right, well, my level of self-esteem is here, my level of self-trust is here, my level of self-honesty is there, and then all of a sudden in your life you notice something really lousy happens. And then all of a sudden all the levels go down a whole bunch, and now you're feeling really crappy. He said if you use tremendous inner resources and you bring all the levels up on purpose, and you start feeling deeper self-esteem and deeper trust and deeper courage and all these other positive attributes that he listed, what happens is, out of the blue, something shifts in your outer reality that completely lifts you up to justify why you've been there. He says he's done it dozens and dozens of times, and it works like clockwork. But if you get into the funk and you dive down with that spiral, then you have other things happening, and then what they say, when it rains it pours, and one bad thing happens and you stub your toe, and then this thing happens, and it's just a series of of bad stuff. So you can actually hold that space. So the fear is pervasive in our culture, and so a lot of people react to that fear and say, well, let's be warriors. Let's have the path of the warrior, the spiritual warrior. I call the warrior, because if you're a warrior, you have to worry all the time. You've got to make plans. You've got to figure out what the enemy's going to do. You've got to get your strategy. You've got to attack and defend and retreat. You've got to go to all kinds of convolutions to make sure that happens. Okay, because a warrior has to protect and defend and attack and battle and know the enemy and strategize. That's a hard game to play. That's a hard thing to be involved in. How much better to look at the path of the adventurer, the person who just opens up in life as an adventure, and you get to love and embrace and know and discover and play and have fun. And this is an alternative that makes just as much sense. No less, no more. I just happen to like it a lot better. Well, the way you shift your emotional tone, and you can allow that to happen, is through starting with your imagination and opening to the emotion of relief. How relieved would you be if you found the right apartment, if you had this happen this way, if this thing worked out well? You move yourself into the emotion of relief. That is the bridge between where you don't want to be and where you do want to be. And try living that relief, and then let the relief grow, because the relief isn't where you want to end up. You want to end up in the gratitude and the joy and the happiness and the exuberance. That's really where it ends up. But the relief is the bridge between, I don't want to be here, to, it all worked out well. That's the relief into the new emotions. So that opens that up. And then from there, you can allow yourself to receive what it is you want. Now, a trick to doing this that makes it even better is to imagine, this is a great one. If you notice that when you're holding a desire for something and the idea of having it feels so exciting that it kind of shakes you up and makes you really nervous inside, that means your allowance level is very low. If it feels normal, that means your allowance level is very high. If it feels, the most extraordinary thing, if I got that, I'd be the happiest person in the world, oh my God, you're not anywhere close to receiving it. Because does that feel normal to you? Not in the least. Normal is normal. So, a way to trick yourself out of that nervous, anxiety-filled place is to imagine, how would I feel if that all came to be 5 years ago? So here's this thing that would be the most exciting thing in the world. My God, if that happened, I'd be the happiest person. Well, okay, imagine that had happened 5 years ago, and now you're used to it. Oh, I'm so glad I live in this reality where for the last 5 years I've had this wonderful, wonderful experience of things just being so smooth, things being so easy, and how wonderful it was that I let myself allow that into my life and just feel the peace of that. Because when you're experiencing it as being normal, you're allowing it in. You can also raise your allowance levels by just doing whatever it takes in your life to just raise your level of ease, joy, happiness, pleasure. Anything like that raises your allowance levels. So as you open yourself up to just feel more and more hours a day being happy on purpose without any justification, well, it's a little crazy, but I think it's a fun kind of crazy, and it makes a lot of sense to me. Anyway, that's enough of that discussion, but if you want more information on this topic, you can go to abraham-hicks.com. They've got some wonderful information there that you can listen to some cassette tapes and learn a lot more about this. So, for distant healing, what you want to do is hold a non-contradicted vibration of the healing that you want. And if you're really nervous or upset about this condition, what you want to do is imagine that it got well 5 years ago. that everything's been fine for a long time. That way you're not in contradictory vibration within yourself. You want to live as if it were already true. And let the reality entrain to the vibration of your joy, to your gratitude, to your love, to your spirituality, to your connectedness with your spirituality. To let it all come together and let it all be one. So the distant healing, energy follows thought. That's the most important thing to be aware of, and what I talked about non-contradicted vibration. Wherever you're putting your attention, the energy goes there. And when you're giving your attention to the neighbor's child, that, whether you're doing distant healing or not, your attention is there. Remember Heisenberg's uncertainty principle? He said the observer is always affecting the observed. So whenever you're giving your attention to anything, you are impacting it, at least on a subatomic level. Well, a lot of people are concerned about the issue of permission for distant healing. And with distant healing, I tend to think that it's not as big an issue as a lot of people consider. Now, it's good to get permission if you can, and if somebody's wanting to receive distant healing. But if you notice your neighbor child playing in the garden, and the child is squealing and running in through the sprinklers and laughing in delight, and you think to yourself, I just love that little kid. I love that kid. What a great kid that is. And do you realize you're having impact when you're doing distant healing just with your love? Do you have to go to the neighbors and say, I need to inform you that I'm loving your child? I need to get your permission. Well, you go to jail for such things, What happens is, your love is always having impact. And you don't have to get permission. Well, if you love somebody, you don't always have to do anything about it. I just love these people who are involved in this. I just love this group. I love this person here. I just appreciate something about that person in my office. That doesn't mean I'm going to have a relationship with that person or know them, but you can love people. You just appreciate people. Your love is having impact. You're doing distant healing. Did you get permission? No, because it's such a natural thing to do and it feels so good. But if you do have concerns about doing distant healing and getting permission, what I suggest is that you send the energy to the highest good. So if somebody's in a coma, or if somebody, for whatever reason, would not understand why you're doing this thing and they think it's some kind of voodoo or something that's scary to them, just send it with the highest good and don't worry about it. And if you do get permission, say, hey, I'd like to send you my love, or I'd like to pray for you, or whatever words work, send the love. And if you want to combine the distant healing with your prayers, perfect. Do what works for you. In fact, as this seminar continues, I'm going to continue to encourage you to make this work your own, to adjust it to yourself, to make up your own techniques as time goes on, to allow yourself to have this work be quite your own. So let's do some distant healing. And what we'll do is we will have the whole group send energy to the whole group right now. And everybody watching the video can do the same. And the way we do that is you can look around the room and get a sense of everybody who's here. And so everybody's looking around, and including everybody else in the room who's here. And what I'll have you do is you can make them very small and put them between your hands. So you got these little tiny people, and you put them in your hands. Don't squeeze too tight. Ow! She's squeezing me. Okay, so soft hands, just like always, because you run energy better with soft hands. And we'll do the distant healing on the whole group. So let's begin. And all watching videotape can do it at the same time. We'll all do it together. So start breathing. Start running the energy, doing the full body sweeps and the breathing techniques. Let's hear some breathing. Come on, a little more breathing. Yeah, that's better. I can really feel the difference as you do that too. Okay, and now try vortexing the energy. Get it spinning up your legs, through your torso, down your arms, into your hands. And feel the difference in the room as you start vortexing the energy. And now turn your attention, take a break for just a second, and think of somebody that you love the most, or it could be a cat or a person. It's the what you love most technique. Bring that love into your space, and now continue running energy to the whole group, bringing in the love of somebody. Feel the difference. So much softer energy. That's right, keep the breathing going. And imagine that you're now sending the energy to somebody you love who needs healing. If you don't have anybody in mind, you just send it to the whole group some more. And imagine they were healed 5 years ago. And how relieved you are. Keep the breathing going. And feel the joy and the gratitude of that relief. And now take a break for a moment and imagine a world where everybody knows that healing is real, that everybody can do it, that it's the easiest skill that there is to learn, that everyone's love is valuable and everyone's love has impact, where children know how to do this work and hospitals are using it. And just take any picture you like, any picture that appeals to you. Institutions and corporations and everywhere you go, people are putting their hands on each other from time to time, and they know that other people's love is beautiful and valuable. We don't have enemies. We all have love to share. like Esther making it rain, it doesn't take a group. It only takes one person holding a vision without any contradiction, just totally allowing that to be true. So I'll be quiet for a couple minutes and let you hold your picture. Perhaps it's a third world country or a little village somewhere, or people on borders where people hate each other doing healing on each other. Anything you like, where people know that healing is real, their love is valuable, and their love has impact. Keep the breathing going. Okay, and open your eyes and come back. Yeah, the distant healing can be incredibly powerful. I've seen some of the most wonderful sessions happen distant healing. It's very interesting to me that I cannot define distant healing very well, because sometimes people will actually know the minute you start doing it, and they can tell you when it began and when it ended. And they can tell you the minute. Most times people don't actually feel it directly. When you put your hands on people, they'll feel it right then and there. When you do the distant, it's more subtle. And yet, there's a chiropractor down in Monterey who was doing distant healing on her grandma who had severe rheumatoid arthritis, and was on the second day of what would be a 2 or 3 week long attack of rheumatoid arthritis. And she spent a half an hour sending distant healing. And the next morning she called grandma and found out that grandma had a good night's sleep, had no pain anywhere in her body, and was up and down the stairs doing loads and loads of laundry, instead of being bedridden as she had been the day before. We've seen wonderful cases of people just sending the energy. And a friend of mine had a severe allergy attack, and she wasn't going to help me with my work. And so I said, well, come on over, I'll give you a session. She said, no, I'm too sick to come over. She said, as a nurse, I've trained myself to medicate myself. I said, what does that mean? She said, well, I'm going to take drugs and knock myself out for 2 or 3 days. And when I come to, I'll be okay. I said, no, I said, let me send some distant healing. She goes, no, I'm just going to take my medication. We argued about it for a while, and finally she said, okay, I'll take them an hour from now if I don't get better. If the distant healing doesn't work. So I sent energy for about 25 minutes, and then my phone rang. But you don't have to send it over the telephone, okay? There's no connection between the telephone lines, and you put the receiver down, and then you send it. And so I was sending energy to her, and 25 minutes later she called and said, oh my God, she said, my allergy symptoms are 100% lifted off. And she said, and my back her back pain disappeared too. We see tremendous impact of this work. You just get out of the way, run the energy, and let it go, and wonderful things happen. We don't know how extraordinary we are. There's so much more to us than any of us have ever imagined. So one of the things that I find incredibly interesting and extraordinary about the work is something that happened sort of by accident. I was thinking about this wonderful book called The Continuum Concept, where a woman talks about how babies aren't held enough and touched enough, and how touch deprivation causes damage in people's lives. And I thought, well, I bet I wasn't held enough. You know, I still have pretty strong touch needs, and not that you shouldn't, but so I decided to hold baby Richard. So I'm holding this little baby Richard in my hands, and I'm thinking, oh, isn't this nice? And I'm feeling very loving and very wonderful. I thought, hey, why don't I run energy? So I start running the energy into baby Richard, and within about half to 3/4 of a second, I felt something I've never experienced in my life. I felt a ripple go through my entire spine, moving all the vertebra. And I can't even do it mechanically. It was like brrr, all the way to the top. My whole spine went brrr. I said, what the heck was that? Like a ripple through time, just moving right through, affecting me. And I can't say what changed in my life. But then I've heard the word transcendence is where you change so completely, you can never remember a time where you weren't that way. You're so thoroughly different that you can't even relate to who you might have been a minute before. Anyway, a lot of people have been having success healing the past. So if there is some deep, damaging, emotional situation that you experienced in the past, you can hold yourself at that time and send your love and healing and run energy, do the breathing, and you can have tremendous impact on the past or someone else's past too. The other technique this morning that I want to show you is called the amplified resonance technique. And then after we've learned it, we're going to go through hand positions and a little tiny bit of breathing for a few minutes, and then we'll start practicing on each other. The amplified resonance technique is really easy and very simple now that you know the distant healing. Say I was working on somebody's knee, and I'll use my own knee as an example, and I have my hands on their knee, and I'm running energy into, it doesn't really go in, it's just a field, but I'm running energy to their knee. Like this. I'm running the energy now. Now, while I'm doing this physically and externally, and I'm moving the sensations, and I've got my hands surrounding the knee, I'm using my mind to do distant healing, and the way I do that is by putting my attention inside the knee, and the energy is swirling. My mind or my awareness is inside the knee and it's swirling around. I don't have to see the cartilage and the bone and the ligaments and the blood vessels and don't have to look at all that. I'm just bringing my awareness inside there as a field of energy. Remember, wherever your attention is, energy goes there. So you're doing distant healing by bringing your awareness into the knee, and then from there, you're running the energy on the outside, and you're bringing your awareness in the inside and have it spinning, vortexing inside there. And that is the amplified resonance technique, because you've got one vibration on the outside that is the vibration of the physical application of life force energy, creating that field, and the other vibration that's on the inside, which is your awareness and the distant healing vibration, and the two vibrations are different from one another. One is the local healing of touch and the vibration coming off your hands, and the other is the vibration of your awareness and your consciousness of the distant healing. The distant healing may not be as demonstrative, but may be easily as powerful and sometimes much more powerful than the local healing. And the local healing, the touch healing, is very much more immediate. But the synergy between these two vibrations come together is much greater than either one alone. And that's why it's sort of the effect of you're doing a group healing by having by doing the amplified resonance technique. So I'd like to review the hand positions and cover one that we didn't cover as well, and also review breathing a little bit, since I saw a couple of you weren't quite doing one of the breathing techniques properly. So we'll start with the breathing. The fire breath is not, it's moving a lot of air out and a lot of air in. You're moving most of your air out and most of your air in with every inhale, exhalation. It's not shallow. It's more like, it doesn't always have to be that loud, but you can do it more quietly and go like that. But you want to move a lot of volume of air, because I saw people doing some very kind of like, more like panting as opposed to, panting was the idea that it's going out and in, but we want to move a lot more. So heavy panting, thank you. Okay, I did a lot now. So the next point that I want to make is that when you're working on immune system function, where would you put your hands? Well, the easiest place to go would be first to work with the endocrine system. The pineal pituitary, have a line right through the head here for pineal pituitary. Then you can go to the thyroid, thymus, and adrenals. This really helps boost the immune system. If somebody's coming down with a cold, great places to go. And I've seen people nip a cold before it comes up quite easily. The next point is that you'd also want to work with people to help boost immune system function by working on the lymphatics. Now, the lymphatics are all the places you're not supposed to touch a stranger. You're not supposed to grab them by their neck and say, "How do you do?" You're not supposed to grab their armpit, "Oh, pleasure to meet you." Or their inner thigh, "Oh, so glad to meet you too." Or their tummy or breast or these areas. In fact, what's fascinating to me is that when you're very frightened, what do you cover up? You cover up the lymphatics, all the places you feel very vulnerable. How interesting that where we feel most defensive is where our body has its defenses. The body's defensive system is where we feel most defensive. And so we're protective of the places where the body's doing its own self-protection. So you can run, with permission of course, you can run energy into those places where the lymphatics are. So you can run it into these places through here or whatever. And that really helps to boost the immune system function. So I'd like to cover hand positions again. And maybe I can borrow you today. Okay? Okay. So come on up here. Let's get it right in the middle. Is this a good spot here? Okay. So as I part the hair a little bit, and we work atlas, axis, right, run the sides of the neck right about here and here. There's also the occipital ridge, and yours is pretty even. And you're just kind of lifting up on the sides right here and here. You can feel it on yourself. Then you can come down the cervicals of the neck. 7th cervical, 1st thoracic, the bone that sticks out at the back of the neck, and the one underneath it. This is often a point that needs a lot of work. You can work everywhere down the spine. Remember, you can use these 3 fingers or the palms of the hand, whatever is convenient to your wrists. Also, this concentrates the energy stronger. Go down the spine, everywhere on the spine that needs it. The hips, to find out where the hips are, you can just press into the side and push down, and I'll get low and we'll see where we are here. And there's exactly it, and it looks even here today. And so then the sacrum, you can run energy in comfortably from different angles. I'd rather be in front like this. Let's turn around this way. And you can kind of, oh, not that far, just about here. That's good. And just walk around it with me. So the sciatica, let's bring this up here so we'll see where you're. Okay, the sciatica points is where the piriformis muscle is on both sides, about here and here. And you could run energy in both of them, but my preference, turn to the side, is to work one point on the side and one point just in about here, so it goes through the psoas. This is the psoas sciatica. And if they have pain going down their legs, you might also spend a little time where the pain goes down the legs as well. Okay? And then, if there's organ problems, you can work right through that heart or the lungs or whatever else you want to work. Just work right through the body for any organ conditions. Am I leaving anything off? Nope, that's it. Good. And of course, we talked about the sinuses, TMJ, where you can feel the joint where you open and close your jaw and run energy into that area there. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, what I'd like to do is open this up to any questions that you may have at this time about the work, and let's hear them.
Do you need to be especially intuitive to do this work?
Really not. In fact, if you just keep using the where does it hurt technique, it just works great. You ask them where it hurts, whether it's an emotional pain that the person feels somewhere in their body, or a physical pain, or tension or tightness or upset or whatever. Start somewhere. And this is one of the great things, is that if a person has like this multiple condition, you don't have to be smart or intuitive. It doesn't matter if you start on the wrong spot. You just start wherever you want. Any place that seems to make some sense, and then the where does it, the following the pain and sensation will move from place to place to place, and you just keep chasing it, and their body will tell you everything you need to know. There are a lot of people who tell me that running energy, especially the supercharging class, is opening them up to their intuitive knowing, and they'll immediately be putting their hands at the right spot. But no, you can be as dense as I am and still be able to do wonderful work with this technique. Yes? Okay.
How long can I expect a healing to last after the session?
Well, it all depends. We don't ever know. Generally speaking, sessions are accelerating the body's healing process for about 2 to 3 days after the session is over. It really speeds up the process. The supercharging class tends to double that. It's more like 4 to 6 days after a session when people have learned the supercharging techniques. But there have been many cases where once the body is in a different resonance, that's all it needed, was just to shift that vibration, and then the body's own healing takes over and it never goes back to where it was before, where the healing is just continuous at that point. What else?
Well, I have 2 questions. One is, how long is an average session? As an average, I know it can be different, but let's say the average session.
Well, practitioners tend to schedule 40 minutes or an hour for their patients, or their clients, I should say. But there is no such thing as an average, because it really depends on what people need. When I was doing work at the University of California, Santa Cruz on the men's basketball team in a small clinical study, I treated like 97 conditions, and what we saw was that the conditions lasted anywhere from 2 minutes to an hour and a quarter. 2 minutes were the jammed fingers, where the pain went down from a 7 or an 8 down to a 2, and then the people weren't willing to let me continue any longer because they wanted to get back on the basketball court. I could have brought it down to a 0, but they didn't want that because they just wanted to play. The longest sessions were the sprained ankles, where it was massive inflammation, and I'd work on one spot for 6 or 7 minutes, and I'd say, how is it now? And the guy would say, well, it doesn't hurt there now, but it's hurting over here. And I'd work on the second pain, then the third pain, and then the fourth pain, because as you remove the big one, then the next one hurts, and the next one hurts, the next one hurts. So there is no answer to that question. It's really what the person needs based on the situation.
And my other question is, what can a person do after a session, just to continue the healing, or to, what's the best thing to do at home? Or
Well, the best thing is, after a session, to drink water, help cleanse your body, and to relax and have a good time. There's really not much you have to do. If you know how to run energy into yourself, it's a great thing to do, which reminds me of something I wanted to tell you about. I'm so glad I remembered while I'm still making this videotape, which is a way that all of you can increase the power of your ability to run energy. What you can do is run energy into yourself. And it's not just self-healing, which it is too, but it also makes you a stronger practitioner. So if you're laying on the couch, you know, just relaxing or watching the tube or whatever, you can hold your hands behind your head and run energy into your head. You can run it through your eyes, through your jaw, through your neck, and then inch by inch down your body. In fact, let's do that now. Everybody watching the video and everybody here, put your hands on your liver spleen area. Now, how you find that is, here's the base of the rib cage here, and put your baby finger so it's on the bottom rib, and your other finger's above it. So you can feel where the bottom rib is, and then run energy into your liver and spleen. The liver's on the right, spleen is on the left, and feel what that feels like to run energy into yourself. Yeah, if you want to cross your arms, that works great too. You may be a little high there. Feel the bottom rib. The baby finger's on the bottom rib. There you go. That's good. Okay, now try putting into your lungs. Run energy into your lungs. Okay, now, what did you feel different about running it into your liver, spleen, and your lungs? Anyone? Feel difference in sensation? Did one feel hotter than the other? How many felt that the liver, spleen was hot? Let's get that. And how many felt that the lungs were hot? Okay, so what you find out is that for me, I used to always feel tremendous heat in the liver. And I don't know what was wrong with my liver, but I was getting tremendous heat there. Then the liver wasn't so hot, and the lungs were just always calling for it. And so it's part of your own process. And as you run energy into the different parts of your body and then practice running it, you can actually find places that need healing. But if you were to spend a half an hour running energy into yourself and you give yourself that session, by the time you're done, your energy is so strong, is so powerful. And when you give somebody else a session, you've boosted your potential of running energy. What other questions do you have?
I had a couple questions. One, like, do you ever feel any discomfort within your own body with the intensity of the energy that you're running during a session?
Do I feel, no, I don't feel that at all, but I'm used to it. I've been running energy for 20-some years. So do you feel
Sometimes when I'm working on people,
Yeah.
using QuantumTouch or other things, it's just a lot of energy moving
Yes.
within me.
And once your body acclimates to that higher vibration, it won't feel uncomfortable at all. So that's just part of your process.
Richard, can you put one hand on top of the other?
It's not as effective to stack your hands like this because you're not creating a field between your hands. It's much more effective to put them near each other. If you're working on a little tiny spot, to run it side by side or to run it through tissue, that creates a very powerful field. You don't add anything when you put your own hands on top of each other.
One other question. When you feel the heat, is that the point that needs the energy?
Oftentimes, when you feel heat coming through, or if you feel a hot spot on the body, yes, that's a very good place to put energy. But my favorite is to let their body decide what it needs, to let the healer, the person receiving the session, to move your hands from place to place and to let them figure it out. We don't have to be that smart. We don't have to be that clever. We just need to be there. And the next question. Yes?
The person that I was working on wanted me to stop after 10 minutes.
Yes.
She said she couldn't handle that much energy. Is
Right.
that true?
Well, it may feel that way to the person receiving it, but this does happen from time to time, and what you want to do is encourage them to relax and to let the energy move through the rest of the way, because they're just experiencing some kind of blockage that's getting broken through. And just like when I was running energy into my tummy and the pain became excruciating, I would have told the person, no, you're killing me, this is too much, I can't take this. But what was really needed was to complete the energy through the cycle. Remember, we talked yesterday, always trust the process. The process always resolves. So if somebody's having some pain coming up or something's happening as a result of the work, trust the process and it will resolve itself. We've seen that time and again. And what else? Any other questions? And any more questions you have about anything? Yes?
Is it ever detrimental to stop a process early or to stop a session early?
It's not so much detrimental as it just puts the person through more grief. In other words, if a person's starting to have a reaction to the session and they're starting to have their pain flare up, as we were saying, if you were to stop at that point, it would slow their healing process from completing itself as fast as it could. So they might be suffering for a lot longer before it was finally resolved. It may take all night, or it may take, a day or two to work its way through, maybe just a few hours. But if you were to run the energy through and really keep that vibration there, the body will have what it needs to move through much more quickly. We've seen times in workshops where people had tremendous pain come up, tremendous pain. There was one woman I remember, and she had tremendous jaw pain. And when she came back to class on the second day, she said, "Oh, my jaw pain is so much worse than it was yesterday." And she said, "I don't think I want anybody touching me today." Well, it took me about 5 or 10 minutes to convince her that we should actually give her more energy. She thought, if I get any more pain, I don't think I could sleep at night. And so we ganged up on her. And people ran energy in, and after about 15 minutes, she heard click, 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 and the whole jaw reset itself. So despite all these jaw surgeries, everything was fine, and she's had no more jaw pain since. So don't give up when pain gets strong, and don't stop, because it's really the best thing you can do. What else would you like to know about Quantum Touch? Anything else come up to mind? All right, what I'd like you to do is take 1 full hour and work with each other. And you can be in groups of 3 or 4. If you've got a group of 3, they are 20-minute sessions, and if you have a group of 4, they're 1-hour sessions. I want you to practice the amplified resonance technique. Use vortexing, keep the breathing going, bring in the what you love most technique, and let's see what we can do. How was that session? Great. Great. Good. Glad to hear it. So let's just take a couple minutes and hear just from a few of you what happened during the session. Anybody want to tell your story?
I just felt a lot more energy giving and receiving this time. Like it's increasing already. That there's a huge difference in what's coming through me, and then what I'm experiencing. Also, more pain is released each time.
Thank you. Great.
So I had quite an amazing experience. I had a bad pain in my back, in between the shoulder blades, and which was intense. And when I came back today, when we practiced, several people worked on me, and in a way which was very, very intense. And it was quite amazing for me, because first the pain became, I felt very hot there, like a little fire in my spine. and it became more intense. And I thought, well, and then it was going away, not completely, and then we'll come back, and then we'll go away and come back. And then slowly it cooled down. They really worked a long time on me, and it cooled down and almost faded completely, and then came back, and then I was like, oh, come on. And then finally, I can feel it a little bit, but it's almost gone. And I mean, I'm quite amazed.
And you said you also felt some tears come up too.
A little bit, yeah. I felt, I didn't feel emotional, but I had tears in my eyes.
Well, that's what happens. It's part of the process. The body does what it needs to do to heal, and sometimes the waves of pain coming and going, it's unusual. It's a very unusual reaction, but it must have been very deep for that to have occurred. I mean, it's a very deep, profound pain, and to have people working on it strongly like that and have it come and go and diminish, it's great. That's fantastic. And how are you feeling now?
No, I feel different. I feel very relaxed. I feel life is great.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
I'm very thankful, I have to say. They didn't want to take care, they just did it.
Great.
So that was very, very kind.
Stand up. So I was having some pain in my upper neck, or actually lower neck, upper back, and I had my lower back adjusted, and then had some healing work done through my upper back, and it slowly dissolved that pain, that feeling. And then actually one of the best benefits I'm just noticing now more is earlier this morning I had to work at 4:30 this morning, and I was feeling really tired and kind of low, and I feel so energized right now and really joyful actually, and that's actually the best. It's a really great feeling, and my back feels a lot better. So
Fantastic. Okay.
Yeah, I had some pain in my upper back, my lower neck, and one of the cervicals was out. You could feel it, that it was clearly out of alignment. And after having my hips adjusted and a little bit of work in the session, it's just back into alignment now. So much more comfortable. That's right.
Great.